Well, happy Wednesday evening and welcome to the start of a new beginner's ham radio class. Ham radio, is that still a thing? It is. Amateur radio is alive and well here in the United States and around the world. It's a worldwide hobby of folks who are interested in the radio art, the technology, the ability to communicate, so in order to become a licensed ham radio operator in the United States, you have to get a license. And you get a license by passing a 35-question multiple choice test. And that's what we're all about, is preparing you to take that test and pass and get your ham radio license and get your call sign and then get on the air. And as we go along, we'll also then impart some information so that you feel comfortable in doing that and make it an easy transition from passing your test to getting on the air. Ham radio is just a heck of a lot of fun, and so we're going to be getting into this for the next 10 weeks, I think it is. So I'm Gary, ham radio call sign Whiskey 4 Echo Echo Yankee, W4EEY. And as some of you might know, this class was supposed to have started last week, except on January the 11th at 1 o'clock. 1. I was going up the stairs to the studio here, and I put my left leg down on the step, and I stepped down, and I heard a big pop. No kidding. And I went down. And bones are fine. The x-rays detect no problems there, but I probably damaged a ligament in the knee, and I'm going in for an MRI on Friday. I had been using a walker for about a week, trying to rest and elevate the injury. I've graduated. I now have a cane. But sometimes I need it. So I will be actually sitting down maybe during part of the class here as we go along if the knee starts acting up. But much better than I was a week ago, and I'm so glad that we can get this class underway. We work out of this book. Let me reach over and get it. This is the American Radio Relay League's license manual for the technician class. It's the 5th edition, and what we try to do is go chapter by chapter, week by week, and the idea is for you to read a chapter at home before class, get prepared, and then come to class and we'll try to elaborate on it. We focus on the test questions, and we'll talk more about that, but in the back of the book are all of the test questions and all of the test answers. So you can't do open book, that's not allowed, but you'll get a chance to be exposed to all of the questions and answers, and we want you to know what the right answer is and why it's the right answer. So Bruce, if you'd take the laptop, please. Welcome to the best hobby in the world. And amateur radio is worldwide. So we're going to start out tonight with some introductions and a little bit about our background. First, me, and you can come back to me full screen, Bruce. So I have always been interested in broadcasting and radio and television. I grew up in the 60s, and watching the TV at home, listening to radio, listening to medium wave stations from far away at night, WABC in New York or elsewhere. And then I got introduced to short wave or high frequency radio reception. I was first licensed in 1969, so we're talking about the end of the 60s, and listening to international broadcasters, Radio Moscow, Radio Peking, Voice of America, the BBC, Radio South Africa. It was fascinating, and they were all broadcasting in English to North America. So it was fascinating to hear about all of these things that were happening in foreign lands. Wow, that's great. And then ham radio. There was a ham radio class at a community college, and so I went and took that, passed, got my novice license, and operated for about a year or two using Morse code only to a very limited antenna system, but making contacts around the United States using Morse code. That was just a world of fun, and it set me on a path such that I let my license lapse. You had to upgrade within a 2-year period, or you had to let the license go. Well, it was high school. Other things were on my mind, so I let it go. But I was always interested in electronics, and I got an electronics background. I have a degree in broadcasting from Central Michigan University, and I worked in production and engineering at radio and TV stations in Michigan, which is where I'm from, and elsewhere. And in 1988, the Voice of America, remember I talked about the shortwave broadcasters, Voice of America, were advertising for their field engineer training program. They said, would you like to come on board and join us and live and work in the world for Voice of America? And I said, yes, please. I had my ham license back at that time, so I applied to VOA, and for 20 years I worked for the Voice of America at various overseas transmitting station sites, where I was licensed locally as a ham in those countries. And my last overseas assignment was in northern Greece, and I retired from Voice of America in 2008 and moved to the upstate of South Carolina, which is where I am right now, and then decided, well, I'm retired now. Let me see what I can do, and let me get back into ham radio. And so I joined some of the local clubs, got involved with a prepper group, and they said, Gary, we want to learn ham radio. Can you teach a technician class? Which I'd done in the past, so I said, sure. And so 10 years ago, that was 10 years ago, that I started teaching amateur radio, and look where we are today. Of course, we survived COVID. We had to go out of the classroom and start doing things virtually, and so that's why we're doing these virtual classes here, because it makes sense. We don't have to schlep equipment from classrooms or meeting rooms or whatever else. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. You'll hear a lot more about me as we go along, but I want you to meet somebody else. He's my backup instructor. Let me take out the spotlight off so that we can bring Dave in full screen here. So Dave Ivey is my co-instructor, and he's my designated substitute teacher. If something happens to me that I can't teach, well, theoretically, you might see Dave. So Dave, come on in and tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. Well, there's some similarities between what I've done and what Gary is doing, and my video is freezing. Hopefully, is my audio coming through, Gary?
Your audio is fine.
Okay, good. I'll keep going then. Yeah, I've been in electronics really my whole life, and what does that mean? Well, I retired at age 65, and that was about 8 years ago. So we were both active back in the 60s, Gary and I both, and I got really started in radio listening to medium wave. It was the AM broadcast stations, and I just thought it was really cool to see how many AM broadcast stations I could listen to. And some of the electronics magazines back then had all of the AM radio stations listed in the back of the magazine, so I could tell which ones were active and what frequencies they were on. So I enjoyed listening to WLS. I was in Wisconsin at the time. WLS in Chicago, and KAAY in Little Rock, Arkansas. Those were a couple of my favorites, and tried to get as many as I could just for my own satisfaction. This was in grade school. Then when I got in high school, I was very interested in electronics and was able to take classes in school. Pursued my ham radio license, got what was termed the novice test or novice license back then. You had to pass a simple, relatively simple technical exam and do Morse code at 5 words per minute. The technician is, what was the novice back then is close to what the technician class is now. It was the entry-level exam. So I did that for a while, advanced to the general class license, and then the advanced class license. The advanced and novice, of course, aren't offered anymore today. And then life kind of happened. Got married, started a career with Motorola. I was involved with the two-way radio industry prior to that, repairing two-way radios, police, fire, that sort of thing. So I kind of got my feet wet there. And then, like I said, I got out of it. Life happened, and so my license lapsed, and I wasn't active for probably 20 years or so. And then back in 2016, my wife and I were talking, and she was previously licensed as well as a novice, and we decided we wanted to get back into it. So we got licensed. I went right up to extra, and she got her technician, and we've been active ever since. Gary asked me if I wanted to help teach these classes, and I said, well, sure, we'll give it a try. So we've been doing this, I think this is our 8th or 9th year doing it. Gary normally does the technician class by himself, and I'm the designated backup, and for some reason, I've never been called upon. But I like to sit in on this first class because you'll know who I am if I just magically show up some night, if Gary gets sick or falls down the stairs again or whatever he likes to do. I've been very active in different aspects of the hobby. I've been involved with some of the digital communications, single sideband, CW. I enjoy contesting. There's something called Summits on the Air and Parks on the Air, which are things that you may be interested in going forward. So those are some aspects of my background. So I'll kind of duck out at this point, and we may see you again in the future. I won't normally be in these classes week to week.
But if you take our general class or the extra class, as we, as you proceed in your ham radio career, as we call it, Dave co-teaches those with me, so you definitely will see him back then. All right, I'm going to turn the spotlight back on here to make things big. So chapter 1 in our book, the 5th edition book that we showed you earlier, is an introduction. There are no test questions in this chapter, and that's what this class is all about. It's kind of an introduction. We already had one person who had issues with video and audio on their laptop, so hopefully we'll get those resolved so that the picture can be bigger, so you can see things in more detail. What we're going to be doing tonight is just kind of introducing you to ham radio, and I like to do this with some videos that I found on YouTube. Come back to the laptop if you would, Bruce. It's what I call ham radio then and ham radio now. So here is what we think about when we think about ham radio back then.
Massive and expensive equipment marks the professional radio station. But in the amateur field, radio parts often include pieces of assorted junk ingeniously assembled by operators who are called hams and who take up broadcasting as a hobby. Cards to prove long-distance contacts are exchanged by the hams and proudly displayed. Jimmy Mulligan here has lots of cards and lots of strange radio parts, such as whiskey glasses mounted on a cake tin. Ma's funnel actually becomes a loudspeaker, and her sieve part of a microphone. Winding a coil becomes comparatively simple when using the family egg beater. And so, while radio's youth is being served, it's cramping Ma Mulligan's culinary style. No end. Well, chow is about ready, so it's time to get the hard-working Mulligan family together. Call Jimmy. Call Jimmy. Call Jimmy. Call Jimmy. Well, I guess that means you, Grandpa. And so Jimmy is called. But shh. Grandpa, Jimmy's practically in a trance right now, so don't interrupt. All amateurs are heroes of the air at heart and dream of a chance to serve humanity or to save lives. It does happen, you know. For instance, in far-off Alaska some years ago, Clyde DeVinna, prominent movie cameraman, devoted long winter evenings to his amateur radio set. Frequently, he talked over a span of 15,000 miles to a lonely lighthouse keeper in New Zealand. Although a great distance separated them, the two amateur operators exchanged gossip nightly and soon became radio buddies. One evening, alone in his cabin, DeVinna became weak. Deadly vapors from a leaky stove were the cause. A few minutes later, when DeVinna's conversation ended abruptly, the lighthouse keeper tried to renew the contact. With all windows locked against the freezing weather, DeVinna's ebbing strength was going rapidly. Finally, realizing that some strange, overpowering force was clutching his life, he managed to repeat the cry of help. Help! In answer to his friend's cry of distress, the lighthouse keeper called the emergency signal, Mayday, Mayday. And so, everywhere within hearing of his voice, operators ceased broadcasting and stood by. With the air lanes now silenced, he called for any amateur operator stationed in or near Teller, Alaska. Near Teller, Alaska. Teller, Alaska. Thus, from a fellow ham over 15,000 miles away, a youthful amateur in Alaska learned that he might yet be able to save the life of a neighbor. Briefly, the lighthouse keeper told his story. And the youngster at Teller lost no time in phoning a doctor living near DeVinna's cabin to rush to the cameraman's aid. And so, due to the efficiency and quick thinking of radio hams, Clyde DeVinna is alive today. But getting back to the Mulligan family, Jimmy's still missing. Call Jimmy. Call Jimmy. Call Jimmy. Oh, dear. Grandpop's missing now, too. Well, she'll get him. What's this? Shh. Now they're both in a trance. Perhaps they're listening to another dramatic radio episode, like the story of courage and service of Wilbur Crane, an amateur operator who flew far out over the Atlantic in search of a missing plane. Crane's pilot, Radio Ham Crane, had volunteered to make the search for the missing ship in his own plane. Amateurs all along the coast were standing by to pick up progress of the search. Colonels listened, ready to go to the rescue. Tensely listening to his reports too, and worried for his safety, were Crane's wife and son. For hours, the uneventful search continued, and then lost in a bad storm, far out at sea, but the search goes on. Heartbreaking anxiety and fear made minutes seem like hours. Weekly, the dots and dashes continued to come in, but the words they spelled out offered no encouragement to Crane's wife and boy. Then, as suddenly as they flew into it, Crane came out of the battering storm. Sailing smoothly into the dawn, and as the visibility cleared, a miracle happened. For there, right below them by a streak of rare luck, was the missing seaplane with possible survivors. Crane flashes the news. Safely out of the storm, the missing plane found. Never had a happier message come over the Crane loudspeaker. The broadcast at the ship's location, their job would be over. But what's this? Hundreds of miles at sea, and their gas practically gone. They hadn't a chance. But Crane's chief concern was to establish the location of that wrecked plane and broadcast the news to the world. Somehow, their plane must be kept in the air until this work was done. Unaware of this new danger, thousands waited to pick up the report that would send rescue ships to the missing plane. But to the wife, there came a premonition of some new peril that cast its shadow over her husband. The report goes on the air. And so, with the conclusion of the report, came the crushing news of their fate. And thus, two heroes once again preserved the finest traditions of the amateur radio fraternity. The radio message picked up by a ship made possible the rescue of those for whom Crane and his pilot had made the supreme sacrifice. Little wonder that to Jimmy and to thousands of others like him, the amateur radio offers continuous inspiration to render aid in times of stress. Whenever a calamity occurs, the ham operator courageously and unselfishly comes to the service of the community. And speaking of calamities, well, take a look at Ma Mulligan's dinner. Boy, break out the bicarbonate. Now, Ma, remember your blood pressure. Take it easy now. So that's the way it is, eh? Well, she'll tell him. That sounds like China. Wow, that's coming 5,000 miles on a homemade set. No wonder the Mulligans are thrilled. Through the genius of little Jimmy, they hear a man speak in far-off China.
In Chinese, that means that that's all for the night, folks.
Yeah, good night.
So that was ham radio then. This is ham radio now.
We live in an age of amazing technology. But for some people, just being a consumer of off-the-shelf gadgets isn't enough. If you're bored with this and looking for something more exciting, why not take a trip around the world at the speed of light?
Delta Kilo 8 Lima Golf, this is Mike X-Ray 0 Sierra Sierra Whiskey. Okay, thank you Frank for coming back to my QRZ call. My name is Adam, as in Alpha Delta Alpha Mike, Alpha Delta Alpha Mike, Adam is my name.
We all love to communicate. Amateur radio takes you beyond being a mere gadget user. It challenges you by putting you in charge of the technology.
The bit that always interested me in the amateur radio was always the construction. One of the big things I've been interested in constructing is using the Raspberry Pi in amateur radio, because as a small single board computer it has a lot of potential, a lot of opportunities.
So we're building a radio receiver.
Okay.
And so I'm just on the part which is the demodulator.
This is a hobby with hundreds of different ways to have techie fun. Using this simple ham radio transceiver and a good antenna, you can talk to other amateurs around the world, and you can do it from almost anywhere.
I'm at a portable station.
The radio signals you transmit travel around the world at the speed of light. No internet connection or mobile phone signals are needed. Just your own skills as a radio ham.
I'm 11 years old and I'm about to do the foundation licence here in England. Over.
I got into amateur radio really to get a greater understanding of technology. I spend so much time on my phone, on laptops, and really have no idea how any of it works. It was a really, really welcoming experience for me, a really great community, and really, really easy to actually do. In disaster situations, when normal communications are out of action, amateur radio still gets the message through, which is why many hams belong to organisations that train their members to provide emergency radio links when needed.
I like the practicality of being able to send a message and know how to get something out to someone under your own steam, so kind of making it yourself. And I'm very interested in being able to do the electronics, being able to build things, being able to be self-reliant. In communication, I think that's really interesting.
It's great fun talking to other hams in unusual and sometimes exotic places around the world. And beyond. The International Space Station carries ham radio gear on board, and there's always licensed amateurs among the crew to use it, such as Commander Doug Wheelock.
I've really enjoyed using the ham radio and talking to ham radio operators all over the world.
Radio amateurs around the world also build and launch their own satellites, and hams anywhere can use them for space communication experiments. And of course, to chat to each other.
Golf 1 X-ray India Echo.
Golf 1 X-ray India Echo, Golf Bravo 1 Yankee Oscar Tango America. Afternoon, 5 and 9. We're using SO50, which is an FM transponder satellite, which was going over from about west to north, around 70 degrees elevation.
When computers and radios come together, there's a whole bunch of new opportunities for hams to connect by radio, sending text, transmitting pictures or real-time video, even displaying data from an amateur radio satellite orbiting the Earth.
Mike 6 November Yankee Kilo.
CQ, GB1 Utah.
I got started in amateur radio because I'm a Girl Guide leader and I wanted to take up a hobby that I could do with my brownies. The interesting aspect of amateur radio is that you do learn how it works, and you get to communicate with loads of different people, find out about different areas of the world. You learn a bit more about the science of how it works, and you have a much more profound understanding of a technology that is going on all around you.
In amateur radio, sport and radio fit together well too.
I'll take another bearing in a minute because I don't trust that.
These guys are trying to locate hidden radio transmitters, racing against each other and the clock. Amateur radio is a fantastic hobby for anybody who loves technology. I've only really been involved in the hobby for a really short amount of time, and I've been speaking to people all across the world. It's a really, really inviting community. One minute you're speaking to somebody about amateur radio and it leads on to so many other discussions about other different technologies you may not have even thought of. So if you do get a chance, come and join us.
So that's ham radio now. Come on back to me just for a second, Bruce. You know, she talked there about it's such a welcoming hobby, and you meet nicest people. It's true. It's absolutely true. This is a great group of folks that have common interests, and it's a hobby, but it's also kind of becomes part of your lifestyle if you get into it that way. It doesn't have to. It's entirely up to you. But that you saw the breadth of the things that you could get involved in this hobby. You don't have to do it all at once. You don't have to understand it all to start out with. But just know that this is one heck of a hobby, and you can tell by my enthusiasm. I love it. So one of the big questions I get, especially from folks who are considering getting their ham radio license, and I talk about it and tell them, you know, we've got to take a test, and some of it's electronics and whatnot, and they ask me, well, why do I have to learn electronics? I just want to talk on the radio. Well, Okay, it has to do a lot with the terms and capabilities of your amateur radio license and tradition and the way that we have grown up in the hobby. Think about radio is actually just a little over 100 years old. And the first radio operators were all amateurs. No one knew what they were really doing in the 1920s. So we've come a long way from that. I do want to make you aware there are other personal radio services here in the United States. Family radio service, that's the little walkie-talkies you can buy at Walmart or whatever else. You don't need a license for those. They're UHF, very low power with fixed antennas. But if you want to talk car to car as you're driving down the freeway, okay, that's great. Family radio service. There's another service called the General Mobile Radio Service, or GMRS, and that's one that you do need a license. You can apply to the FCC and get it for just paying the fee, which is $35 for 10 years. And they will give you a GMRS call sign. Mine is Whiskey Sierra Alpha 412. And you use UHF frequencies designated for the General Mobile Radio Service, and you can use GMRS radio repeaters if they're in your area. So that's another service that you might be interested in. There's the multi-use radio service. Citizens Band is still around, 27 megahertz. If you're on the water, well, there's the marine radio service. None of these are going to require a knowledge of electronics for you to get a license. Ham radio, on the other hand, is involved in international communications. That's number one, so it's kind of sensitive. You may build and use homemade equipment. You can have an output power of up to 1,500 watts, whereas the little GMRS radios are probably about 1 watt output. You have a wide variety of frequency ranges, so you need to know how to prevent interference to other services that might be using adjacent frequencies. And this is in the Communications Act of 1934. Amateur radio advances the radio art. And we do this from trying out new modes, new operating techniques. All of that comes from amateur radio. And you heard in both of the videos that when all else fails, amateur radio gets through. Case in point, come back to me just for a sec, Bruce. This weekend, so I am in the upstate of South Carolina, near Anderson, South Carolina, Anderson County. And we have a big storm coming our way with snow, ice, freezing rain, sleet. They're actually expecting here in Anderson County to get about 1 inch of ice, and that's not good. But things are gearing up already here in our local amateur radio community to be able to assist emergency services with communications to make sure that things go smoothly. A year ago here in the upstate in western North Carolina, Hurricane Helene came through. Cell towers were all down. Power was down. I had lost power here for a week, and internet for 3 weeks. But amateur radio repeaters were still on the air, still passing traffic, still getting information through. I don't know if you noticed, but we're living in interesting times. I don't know how you feel about it, but we're going to, take over Greenland. Now Europe is our enemy? What? Amateur radio can help in these times as well by helping you to get accurate, timely information. So it's really a great hobby to get into at this point in time. So the reasons to get a technician license: emergency communications, that's number one. If you're a model radio enthusiast, if you control planes or things like that, you can actually increase your output power if you have a ham radio license. There's a new technical understanding. You don't have to know how everything works, but you'll understand more about how things work, and that will make the job of living easier. And it's just a heck of a lot of fun. You'll meet like-minded people. When you get your license and get on the air, that's when the real learning begins, because you're really getting a license to learn. And we're going to encourage you to go on to the general class license, the intermediate license, because there you get more frequencies and capabilities for long distance communications on the high frequency bands, direct station to station type communications. So for the technician license, which is what we're emphasizing right now, what we're looking at, you must pass a multiple choice test, 35 questions from a question pool. If you've had an expired amateur radio license, and even if you had a general or advanced or extra class, you can get those that level back just by passing the technician test. Don't think that'll apply to a lot of you, but just make that aware. You heard Morse code there, but Morse code is no longer required for a ham radio license. It used to be, but it's still alive and well as a mode of operation. And if you'd like to learn, we have some videos here on my YouTube channel. And we also then promote the Long Island CW Club. They do a great job of teaching Morse code on the internet, so it gets you going. All right, you're not going to be able to read this, but tomorrow you'll get a PDF or a link to a PDF of this presentation. So here are all of the hams in the various states in the United States. That's half of them, and here's the other half. Okay, really fine print. The point I want to make is that there are right now 738,000 licensed amateur radio operators in the United States. It is declining because there are so many other things to capture people's interest and attention, and because a lot of the old timers like me are, saying goodbye, becoming what we call silent keys, so our job here in this class is also to help try to grow the hobby as much as we can, because we really love the hobby. So what are we going to be doing in the class? Well, we're going to cover, as we mentioned, one chapter each week. Chapter 1, what we're doing tonight, is an introduction. No test questions being discussed tonight. But for next week, I want you to please, before class, read Chapter 2 in the book, Radio and Signals Fundamentals. And if somebody tuned in late, this is the book we're talking about, the ARRL License Manual for the Technician Class, the 5th edition book. This is the book that we go from. So read Chapter 2, Radio and Signals Fundamentals for next week, please. You may be scared. You may go, I'll never understand any of this. Don't worry. Do you want to get your license? If your motivation is strong, that is the key. And we will give you all of the information necessary to pass your test and to get your license. You can do it. If you're looking for the book, by the way, here's a link on Amazon and more information about that. So again, you'll get in the PDF tomorrow. This is our schedule. Tonight it's session number 1, where we're just doing the introduction. And we're going to go all the way through March 25th. I sent out an email with a revised schedule, and I forgot a week in March. So we actually end at the end of the month of March. We'll take some practice tests together. So your target is to schedule to take your amateur radio exam sometime at the end of March or in early April. That is where you're targeting. Well, Gary, where do I go to take my test? That's a very good question. And I would ask, is there a local amateur radio club? There probably is. You can use this URL from the American Radio Relay League, their Find a Club page, put in your zip code, and it'll give you the nearest amateur radio clubs to your location. And I would invite you to go, even if you don't have your license yet, go and attend one of their meetings as a guest and see what they talk about, see who they are. There can be good clubs and bad clubs. It's all depending on what you're comfortable with. So go to more than one club and find one that seems to be supportive of new amateur radio operators. And they'll tell you where the tests are being given in your area, the date and time, so you can plan. You want to have this goal, this date certain, that's when you're going to take your test. Well, there's no ham clubs around me, or it's too far away, or I can't drive, or Yes, you can test online. You can go to this website, hamstudy.org/sessions, and look for just online testing sessions. Students have given me feedback that the Anchorage, Alaska group is probably, they're the nicest people and they're really good, and it's been a really good experience for folks. If you can take your first test in person, I would highly recommend it. You're going to be nervous enough as it is. You don't need to add all the computer complexity. So if you can do it in person, I highly recommend that. So what is this test all about? Well, it's based on a question pool that is at least 10 times the number that's on a single exam. Right now there are 411 questions in the technician class question pool. The test will be taken from those questions, and you'll get a 35-question multiple choice test. You need to get 26 right, or 74%, in order to pass. And as an additional study aid in the PDFs that we will give you starting next week with Chapter 2, we're going to give you something called the Right Answers Study Guide, which is are the questions from Chapter 2 for next week, and just the right answer. Some people, this is a helpful way for them to associate question, answer, question, answer. It's entirely up to you whether you use this, but we're going to make this available to you. There are other study resources. You can use those as well. We're going to give you links to videos from Dave Kassler, ham radio call sign Kilowatt Echo 0 Oscar Golf, he's the OG, or the original gangster of YouTube ham radio instruction videos. He's got some introductory videos. He doesn't teach the class. He's never taught a class, but he does do introductions to the material to provide additional context, so you might find those interesting. And as I mentioned, we'll be sending you an email with links to PDF copies of the PowerPoint that I'm giving now, and any other supplemental material that we talk about. We're streaming these classes live to YouTube. Thanks, guys, for watching us on YouTube. And also, we have it recorded on YouTube. So if you're coming here to the Zoom classroom, or you're regularly coming on Wednesday nights, and then life happens, it does, don't worry about it. It's recorded on YouTube, and you'll be able to watch the presentation at your leisure at any time. So you can catch up, and you'll be right up to date. We want you to ask questions, to communicate, email or text me, share information with fellow students. That's why we keep email addresses out in the open for the two groups. We have two mailing lists, the one for the Zoom classroom and one for folks watching on YouTube. We'd like to invite you to think about joining the American Radio Relay League. We think it's a good value. They've got magazines that they send you electronically every month, and they're our lobbying organization to Congress that protects our frequencies and the allocations that we have in the United States. And that local ham club. Consider joining the local ham club when you find something that is simpatico with you. We learn from our students, and a student asked me one time about a year ago, Gary, why don't you have a Discord server? And I responded, what the heck is Discord? So we have a private study group on Discord to study for the Tech, General, and Extra class. It's invitation only, so for those who have registered with me by email in the Zoom group or in the YouTube group, tomorrow you'll get an email with an invitation to join the Discord study server. If you're watching on YouTube right now, you just kind of happen to bump into us and you say, this looks interesting, I'd like to know more, just send me an email, w4eey@arrl.net, and ask any questions that you might have, or say, I want to watch on YouTube, could I get on the YouTube mailing list? And I'll put you on the YouTube mailing list, and you'll get the Discord invite as well. Listening is the key to understanding. Back when I worked for a company up in Michigan, we produced a video with that very title. We want you to be able to listen and ascertain what's going on. In the past, we talked about, you know, having you buy a small radio and listen to repeaters in your area, but then the radio has to be programmed, and it's kind of, well, I don't know. So last year I started doing something, and I'm going to continue. I'm going to recommend that you go to this site, Broadcastify. And on Broadcastify, which is a website, go to this room. It's the Kansas City-wide Digital Fusion Room. And you can see the feed number down there at the bottom. It's feed 30282. This is a Yaesu Fusion, which is a digital voice mode that is used by amateur radio operators for a group in Kansas City, but it actually has participants from around the world. And so you can go there, it's free, and just listen in and hear the conversations and the things that are going on in this amateur radio community. Now, there are other spots also you can go on Broadcastify for other repeaters as well. So, but here you don't have to buy anything, you don't have to send anything up. If you go to Broadcastify and listen on those, and again, you'll get this PDF presentation tomorrow with the links, then you can maybe say, oh, that's what he was talking about. I'm hearing picket fencing or other things. You'll know what we're talking about. Now, if you do have a radio, even an old scanner radio, you can listen to local amateur radio repeaters. And you can use a website called radioreference.com that'll give you the frequencies for the radio repeaters that are in your local area. If you have a shortwave portable with single sideband reception or a general coverage shortwave receiver, which is not so readily available anymore, you can listen to the HF amateur radio bands. If you want to buy a radio, what radio should I buy, Gary? What should be my first radio? Well, I don't want you to spend a lot of money because you might not like it or it might not be the one for you. But the TID Radio H3. This is a radio that's made in China, so it's Chinese quality, okay, but it's $30, available on Amazon. I've got one right over here. Oops, let me reach over here without throwing my knee out. Coming back to me. So this is the TID Radio H3. It's an FM modulation radio for VHF and UHF. And you can't legally transmit on this radio until you get your license. But you can have the radio programmed, or you can program the radio to listen on local amateur radio frequencies. So that's entirely legal. And you can buy the radio before you have your license. That's entirely legal as well. So this is something that you might want to consider, the TID Radio H3. Again, you'll see the links tomorrow when you get the PDF. If you want to buy a portable shortwave radio, there's a bunch of them out there. This is one from TechSun. I have never owned this one, but it's got some pretty good ratings. No, just listen online. You can use software-defined radios. So here are some links to 4 software-defined radio systems. They're radios on your computer, and you can control them remotely to listen in to the amateur radio frequencies. You can listen for contacts, try to relate to what you hear there with what we talk about in class, take notes, and ask me questions. And for those who are watching us on YouTube, again, if you'd like to get on the YouTube mailing list, just send me an email to w4eey@arrl.net, and we'll get you on that list as well. Have fun and learn something. Ham radio is the best hobby in the world. All right, so what I want to do now, please, let's take 5 minutes for an intermission. I want you to get up and stretch, move around, and then come back for just a few minutes of a review. Just want to kind of plant a seed in your brain to maybe grow, and then when you read the chapter 2 material, you'll say, oh, that's what he was talking about. So let's take 5 minutes, and we'll be right back. All right, if you're an electronics technician already, or if you're a science or a math major, something like that, this is going to be silly. But I just want to talk about some things for those who haven't gone to high school in years and years and years, or haven't had a math class, or never liked math, or things like that. I want to talk about numbers and have you start thinking about numbers in a new, maybe, or different way. So we have the whole numbers. If you take the iPad there, Bruce. So here are our whole numbers. 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. Everybody knows about those, of course. But remember that numbers can be looked at as well. Let's see which pin I've got here is So 1.3, let's say, or 1/4 fractions. Different manipulations you can do to numbers. Remember the the number lines that your teacher used to draw on the board, and we could say that here's the 0 line, and everything up here is a positive number, and everything down here is a negative number. We'll be dealing with some of this, not necessarily in the technician class, but coming up in the general and extra classes. We'll be looking at Cartesian coordinates and things like that. For tonight, I just want you to consider some numbers that might be greater than 1. So let's say this is our 0 down here. Okay, here's maybe 1, and maybe here's 10, maybe here's 100. Maybe here's 1,000, as we go up on our number line here in our scale. Well, when we use all of the numbers, it becomes difficult. And in science, we want to speak clearly. We want to make sure that people understand what we're talking about. So in science, we use the metric system, and we use the metric prefixes. So if we're going to talk about thousands, we use the metric prefix kilo. If we're going to talk about millions, we use the metric prefix mega. And if we're going to talk about billions, we use the metric prefix giga. Kilo, mega, and giga for numbers that are above 1, let's say. And so as you do your reading in chapter 2 for the next week, you're going to see these prefixes. For numbers between 0 and 1, so here's 0, and let's say here's 1. Well, as we move down here, we're talking about smaller and smaller and smaller units. And so here, if we talk about these smaller units, 1/1000th, for example, we use the metric prefix milli. For 1/1,000,000th, we use the metric prefix micro. For 1 times 10 to the minus 9th, this is a scientific notation. We call this a nano. Nano, whatever the base unit is. And 1 times 10 to the minus 12th, pico or pico. I just wanted you to know that these metric prefixes are the ones, these 7, that we're going to want you to learn and to know. Milli, micro, nano, and pico, kilo, mega, and giga. And as you do your reading, you'll see these described, and hopefully it'll come clear to you. That is it. Yay! You made it through the first class. So let's, Bruce, if you want to take up the class chat there slide, I will go ahead and turn off my spotlight. And term, you may have seen me use it in my emails. The telegraphic term 73 or 73 is a shortcut term that telegraphers used that means best regards. So until next week, 73, and we'll see you.
Interesting. When we use that as a game, thanks to 73. Frank.
Are we going to go over the 10 codes and the 100 codes?